Sadly, as so often seems to be the case with these videos, I'm forced to start by saying I was right. The exact thing that I warned was a terrible idea and would be a humanitarian disaster in my last video is now taking place on a terrifying, absolutely horrifying scale, and in the middle of a war zone, which is what Gaza is right now. It's impossible to get accurate, unbiased information about exactly what is going on, but there can be no doubt that thousands of lives have been lost as a result of the actions of the Israeli authorities, and that thousands more are at risk, including the families of journalists and the families of medical professionals who are working there to try and make things better. And these are unacceptable. These are war crimes. Furthermore, at this point, communication from the region has been cut off. So we really don't know what is going on in Gaza right now. And it seems screechingly unlikely that communication has been cut off while everyone sits round and sings Kumbaya. The reality is that the situation is undoubtedly escalating in ways that don't even bear thinking about. Now, you're probably aware that I'm involved with the Peace Pledge Union, which is an organisation that's existed for a very long time that campaigns against war all over the world. You might have seen me wearing a white poppy on TV and getting an appropriate internet backlash over it, or an inappropriate one, depending on your point of view. The Peace Pledge Union suggested that the most appropriate thing to do today would be to go down and join the Palestinian Solidarity March being organised by CND and other organisations, and I did that. But I'm also aware across social media people have been asking questions about these marches, and people are in some ways uncomfortable with what might be going on, so I thought I would answer some of those questions. So firstly, why are people not protesting for Hamas to free the hostages that they still hold? And the answer is, first of all, let me be very clear. I absolutely believe that Hamas should immediately release all of those hostages without question. However, I don't believe that Hamas are paying attention to whether I go on a march or not, or whether I express those opinions, voice those opinions. I doubt they watch News at 8 on a regular basis. Whereas I am a voter in the UK, which purports to be a democracy, and so I think that the UK government should listen to my voice. And what the UK government has done since the latest round of offensives from the Israeli authorities is they have offered diplomatic support, they have sent arms out there, and they have moved UK military resources into the region to support what Israel is doing. And so I do think that it's important to raise my voice and call on my elected representatives to oppose that and to call for a ceasefire. Here are some other things I've heard, I think perhaps slightly more spurious things, but I just want to kind of rattle through them and make sure that I address them, that they don't come up in the comments or whatever. Firstly, I've heard, well, Hamas are responsible for what is going on because if they had only done what the Israeli authorities told them to, then this wouldn't have happened. Well, I'm afraid it doesn't work like that. If I come around your house and I say, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill your wife and your children, and then you don't do what I told you to do and I kill your wife and your children, I'm afraid to say that their blood is on my hands. Whether or not the thing that I was asking you to do was reasonable or legitimate or fair or just or whatever, the fact is that killing civilians because others have not done the thing that you asked them to do, you are responsible for the deaths of those civilians. There's no other way of expressing that. Secondly, I've heard, well, LGBT rights are not very good in Palestine. Other kind of social justice issues, they're actually much better in Israel than they are in other parts of the Middle East. And if you want to join a campaign to promote LGBT rights around the world, I'll be the first one next to you. If you want to join a campaign to promote democracy around the world, I'll be the first one to join you. But if that campaign involves dropping bombs, cutting off power supplies, cutting off aid supplies, bombing people who are trying to leave the region, then I'm sorry, you cannot pretend that what you're doing is intended to spread justice, hope, truth, whatever, because it simply isn't. The way that we spread human rights can never, ever be by bombing innocent people. It's a nonsense. Next, I've heard that what has been going on for several decades now in Gaza and other occupied territories is not genocide because the overall Palestinian population has risen across that time period. Well, again, I'm sorry to say that is not how it works. It is not okay to murder somebody if elsewhere in their family a couple of kids have recently been born. It's not the size of the overall population that tells us whether genocide is going on or not. The question is, have there been mass murders where the dominating factor in who's getting murdered is their ethnicity or their social, cultural, religious group? And the answer is yes, that has very much been going on. That is going on right now. Now, I was very concerned when I went down to the march that there would be an anti-Semitic element there. So let me be very clear, anti-Semitism exists. It's a very real problem in our society, both among people who are overtly and vocally anti-Semitic, and also just in terms of the social culture in which we live. It is very easy for us to be used to hearing things and not noticing them. Anti-Semitism is very, very real, and I'm well aware of it, but also lots and lots of Jewish friends of mine are quite understandably well aware of it, and of course have been affected by it and have experienced horrific things, and my absolute sympathy to all of you who go through that. Of course, it is entirely to be expected that in a situation like this, there may well be people with anti-Semitic views who feel emboldened by this and want to come along to a march like this and express those views in the hope that they can spread them. And it is also the case that people, perhaps well-intentioned, might accidentally fall into regurgitating anti-Semitic tropes and memes because they haven't really thought about them very much themselves and they haven't really challenged them very much themselves. In fact, on the way down there, I was held up for a good sort of 20-25 minutes in Embankment Station as people kind of queued to get out. I ended up chatting to a young French-Moroccan family, a couple with a little girl who were kind of playing and chatting. And it was their first time ever going to a protest of any kind, but they felt, as I did, that this is such an important and vital issue that we had to make our presence known. The very last thing that the dad said to me as we kind of parted company and I waved them off and they headed down to see if they could find their way onto the road to get more involved in the march was, "Oh, I hope there aren't any of those controversial chants." And I was like, yeah, I hope so too. And that was absolutely the sentiment that I heard echoed as people headed off, was like, we want to be a part of something very, very positive that's calling for peace and that's calling for respect for absolutely everybody involved. And I'm really glad to say that when I got to the march, I didn't hear anything which felt anti-Semitic to me. Of course, there might be variation in what you think has got an anti-Semitic undertone to it. Of course, these things will not always be, it's never quite as clear as this isn't. Of course, there is always reason to double question what you're saying, double question what you're hearing, and ask whether there might be something problematic hidden in it. I certainly didn't hear anything that I felt was anti-Semitic. I would totally open and transparent, I did see a group of people who were calling for an end to the existence of the state of Israel, and I absolutely understand how that might feel to some people to hear. Let me be super clear, it was these guys, and I think that they are entitled to their opinion, right, and that they're entitled to express it. As is everyone who disagrees with me. And of course there will be people who will have seen other parts of the march and might have seen something that they are uncomfortable with or something that makes them feel unsafe, and my absolute sympathy in that scenario. Of course there is a huge diversity of opinion, and of course within that there were hundreds of thousands of people there today. Of course within that there will be people whose views I find utterly obnoxious on this issue and on other issues. However, diversity of opinion is exactly what we want to allow and to encourage. And we shouldn't allow fear about whether I might be stood next to someone who has an opinion that isn't particularly in alignment with mine or isn't particularly palatable to me. We should not allow fear of that to stand in the way of standing up for the single most important thing that we can ask for in this case, the thing that is best for Palestinians, that is best for people in Gaza, the thing that is best for people in Israel, and the thing that is best for hostages currently being held in Gaza, the thing that is best for all of those groups of people, is for there to be an immediate ceasefire and for the UK government to be a part of calling for that ceasefire. And that's why I went on the march today, and that is what I want. And I send absolute solidarity to everybody around the world who wants that too. See you next week. Increasingly, the mainstream media is terrible at informing the public of what is really going on. I'm only able to make these videos because people are generous enough to sponsor me making them, and if you're able to be a part of that, I would hugely appreciate it. It can cost as little as $1 a month, and you'll get loads of fun bonus content and lots of extras from me, and my undying gratitude. I also massively appreciate it if you're able to like, share these videos and let people out there know what's going on.